Hi everyone, I am going live just spontaneously. So if you're out there in Instagram land, wanted to talk about a couple things, especially if you're florists, do weddings, things like that. I kind of have something that's been on my mind, and I really wanted to kind of just talk about some stuff as the season has definitely changed, and we are definitely seeing an increase in wedding business. I know a lot of times we talk about this in the summer. I think everybody took a great break, and there was vacations and traveling and different things like that happened. But now it seems like everyone is back and everything is happening. And as a flower buyer here in Nashville, I am seeing the tsunami of orders and product. And I just thought it might be interesting if anybody had questions and you wanted to ask a question or two. I'd be available to help maybe answer some things about sourcing, about what's out there, about substitutions, about challenges you might be having. Also, I am putting together some stuff, and I want to write down some of this material and maybe produce a podcast episode just about this topic, if you think that'd be interesting, because frankly, I'm amazed at the difference 2 weeks makes in product availability, sourcing products. I, as a buyer, buy literally all over the world and bringing in products for weddings, and I'm really excited that we've been able to shift to a lot more local products and trying to use local sources to bring in things for our wedding customers and event customers on top of just the everyday flower business. That's been really exciting. But anyway, but I wanted to just share that as far as here, I want to say hi to some people. It's good to see everybody. I, again, am going live just to talk about the wedding business that's coming up. I am noticing a huge trend. Oh, before I do this, so if you have any questions you want to put in the bubble down below, please let me know. I don't know if you saw my reel yesterday, but I wanted to show you these Moab roses. They're a little bit hard to find because right now there's one grower that has the exclusivity about growing them, and this is called Moab. They come in really tight, but they open really big, and really probably for personals this might be way too big, but for tables, centerpieces, bigger pieces, they're really beautiful. They have a lot of pink in them, a lot of mauve in them, kind of that dusty rose color, but it's kind of like a quicksand with a few more a depth of color. So I did this. Well, actually, I started this, and my wife finished this for me. This beautiful arrangement with all these different tones. And for fall, I think it's really, really just kind of a fun mix of colors. And I think that it's going to definitely be something worth pursuing. So if you have access to it, it's called Moab. I wanted to talk about, I have noticed, I know a lot of times when people wait to place wedding orders, I really wanted to just say, I would really recommend, if you are in the wedding business, if you have a flower shop, if you have to source products other than products you grow, I would really recommend starting to put orders in with your suppliers at least 3 weeks ahead of time. If you could do earlier, that would be great, but I want to say that 3 weeks now seems to be a standard that I would really, really recommend. A lot of products, I know that from a sourcing standpoint, I have been sourcing flowers for our wholesale house a good 2.5 weeks before actual wedding dates, and what I'm finding is that's almost not enough time. Now we're having to push even farther ahead because the products are just getting sucked up into the flow so quickly, and I am just wanting to let people know that if you're in the wedding business, that I would definitely start sourcing. Also, I would start looking possibly for products that could be substitutes, for things that are typically in demand. I remember last year, I think quicksand got really, really crazy. It got so crazy that I know a lot of people were really frustrated. But when there was limited supply and high demand, that's one thing that the flower business really doesn't respond well to. So this is a tighter rose. Somebody is asking what the name of this rose is. This is called Moab, and it is a Rosa Prima rose. And it opens somewhat quickly, but I've had these out of the cooler now since Saturday, and they were really tight then. But by Sunday, actually it wasn't Saturday, it was Friday. And so in 2 days, they opened up completely. And so they're really, really beautiful. And would really recommend that. Hey, everybody, thanks for joining. I just wanted to kind of go back and say, like I said earlier, like with quicksands and things like that, roses that I'd love to know. So let me ask a question for those of you that are following along. If you aren't able to get quicksand or it seems too expensive, I'd love for you to put in the comments what you use for a substitute. Because so many times people are like, what can we use? And I know quicksand has so many great qualities. The color, the size of it, it takes up some space. The way it opens is always fabulous. I think it smells pretty good. So I'm curious, what do you use for a substitute for quicksand? And I just want to throw that question out, because that's one of the roses that often has some challenges because of supply and demand. Okay, so thanks so much for that. Soul Sister, I know that was one of when we did the live with Ellen, somebody mentioned that was a great producer, and I'm so glad you shared that, because I feel like if there is a rose that we can grow locally that will help curve some of that demand, I just want to encourage more people to grow it. I get asked all the time, Scott, what is a good flower for me to grow? What is something that you're not getting and you're not sourcing? That would be a great suggestion. Thanks so much for sharing that. That was really great. But to continue on, there's a lot of different, spray roses, like white spray roses. Like sometimes people want white majolica, but not all white majolicas are equal, are they? Some have a little more blush, some have a little more cream, some open fabulous, some don't open fabulous. That's one of those roses that, depending on where it's grown, the altitude, the fertilizer, the sunshine, the days, maybe cloudy days, drops in temperature, that's interesting. Okay, so all right, Samantha's Garden, thank you so much. Faith or Sahara? Now Sahara, I have heard a lot, and I'm curious. Sometimes I love Faith, and Faith is not it's been around a little while, but Faith to me sometimes has a little bit of lavender. Do you think that? I'm just curious if you feel like sometimes it goes a little too, I don't want to say purple, because it's not that dramatic, but it's very soft tone. But that's a great suggestion. I appreciate that. Just to say hi to some people. I think that, so white majolicas are an issue. But now, people who want more of a white spray rose, snowflakes are very popular still. Vivian, sometimes people love or hate. But they're all really great. Another thing that's been really popular, of course, is dahlias. And dahlias are so hard depending on where you're located. I know that we're super stoked because this year we have been able, so far, knock on wood, to convert all of our dahlia procurement to local sources. So we've gotten away from California, which has always been a great source, but by the time they get cut and get to Nashville, a lot of times they don't have the good shelf life. And so sometimes that is not a great thing, and it's a little frustrating because you're depending on these flowers. They look so great when they come in, but when you start adding the days to a Saturday or for a wedding, it's a little frustrating. Cappuccino sprays. Oh, that's a great suggestion too. because the whole world of spray roses is a whole nother suggestion. I'm wondering, have you ever used a spray rose called Earth? Earth is, sometimes people say earth tones, but Earth is a great rose out there for that. Sahara Sensation is another one that is really popular with all of those earth tones and different colors. So I'm just writing some of this down because I know that it might be helpful in a later episode or post. Thanks so much for sharing that. So one of the things I was asking earlier, if you just joined, is, what is a substitute you use for quicksand if you're having a hard time with quicksand? I know, as someone's mentioned, so far we've had Soul Sister, which is from a local domestic source. We've had Sahara, and we've had Faith. I know, I'm kind of curious. I hate to even bring this up because I find this incredibly painful. What do you think about these painted roses? I'm not a big painted rose person, but I know there's one farm that has a variety called Honey Mocha, which is kind of a toffee substitute. I know there's a lot of other companies trying to create quicksand looking roses. What do you think about flies and mosquitoes, about these painted roses? I don't know. I have a hard time with it. Number one, because they're painted, but number two, I just feel like they are so, they just look so artificial. Honey Mocha is probably the best sub I've seen for a toffee. But again, once they, that's the other thing. When some of these open up, you see down in the center what the original rose color was. Kind of like roots if you get your hair dyed. I think it's kind of funny. But yeah, always trying to figure out what is a good substitute for some of the really popular flowers. I don't know. Maybe I'm curious if there's any flowers you're having a hard time finding right now, because I know it can be all kinds of things. I know recently we've had a lot of requests for the good old-fashioned apple blossom snap, and I know with that white and kind of pink bicolor, it's so popular. It's such a great pastel wedding flower. But a lot of the growers this time of year, because it's felt to be like a spring color, I'm getting requests for them now, but 2 weeks ago I found out they're done. Yeah, they're totally done. And so now we're like, okay, what are we going to use for a substitute? It's such a specialty variety. Luckily our grower has a very kind of pastel-y light pink, a very washed out light pink snap. And so we're hoping that that's going to work in transitioning for some of these customers. Just in case you were just joining us, I was showing this Moab rose that we've gotten in, and I was testing it to see just how it opened. It opens huge. I mean, it's like, I know it's hard to see because the whole camera angle thing. So here this is up against my big fat head, and you can see it. It's a big rose. This is a little challenging to source though. Number one, it's brand new. Number two, it's very popular, especially going into wedding season. Number three, there's only one grower. It's Rosa Prima. So if you deal with anyone that does Rosa Prima roses, you might start there. I know we're starting to get more orders for them, and I'm even having a hard time sourcing them. And so anyway, just wanted to share that. Thanks so much about my shirt. I love this shirt. It's one of my favorites. I need about 5 of them. Okay, we have a great comment here. Let me read it. Sometimes I combine white and cream flowers with naturally dried ingredients to achieve the same color palette as quicksand when not available. That is a great suggestion because so many times our eyes play tricks, and when we can incorporate these natural products with those sandy natural tones, it makes the other products feel way more off-white or not quite as a white. And so I think that's a great idea. I think that's really great. Thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah, hey guys, thanks for joining us. Always trying to figure out these things. They can be so challenging, and I really feel like I'm trying to think of some other things that have been a bit of a challenge. One of the things, I don't know about y'all, so we've had a lot of demand for things like apricot colored statice, peach yarrow, like cottage yarrow. A lot of these flowers, they've been challenging because a lot of those flowers, especially the yarrow, cottage yarrow, is a sort of an early summer bloom, and a lot of them have been cut, and through either the weeds or the heat or dryness, depending, they've just gone through a cycle, and some come back for a reflush of flowers that we can use in the fall or anytime right now, but they're never as prolific and as big as beefy as they are on the first flush earlier in the sort of like I'll say late spring-ish when they start. And so I'm really excited that we were able to find some sources for sort of an apricot colored statice. And it's kind of a combination. It's not a pure color. It's kind of like this amaranthus right here, where it's got some pink tones, some of these kind of corally, dusty corally tones, and it's really kind of great. And so anyway, just talking about really, if you're in the wedding business, I would really recommend starting to place your orders earlier. Whoops, sorry, got a little tipsy there. As this is kind of like a public service announcement. I don't know if this is helpful for anybody, but I know when I see these things happening and I see them coming down the pipeline, sometimes by the time a wholesaler or a local farmer communicates to you what's going on with the crops in the field or what's going on with products in general, it's too late. It's really hard to find substitutions because everyone is scrambling for the same substitutions. And so the farther out, like I would start, like I said, 3 weeks, definitely start placing orders, getting confirmations, and tell your wholesaler, tell your grower, your farmer, whoever you're working with to source flowers, tell them, look, I know it's Mother Nature. I know there's only so much you can do. So this is really, really what I want. And maybe even give them a price limit, like say, I don't want to pay more than this for it. That way you're not surprised, because it's always hard. And I'm curious too, if you have an opinion on this one, I'd love to hear it. Would you rather your supplier buy the product? Because sometimes it's literally like you have no time. I forget what it was today I was trying to source, and I went to go buy it. It was there. By the time we contacted the customer about the price change and then went back to it, it was gone. And we went through all of that, and sometimes you literally have 10 or 15 minutes, and I'm curious, and before the product is gone. And you can put it in a shopping cart, and it can sit there for 30 minutes or an hour, but after that hour, it may go back into the population, and you might miss out. So would you rather someone go ahead and buy your product, or maybe communicate a price cap, so if they're making a decision, they can make an educated decision, and then go to plan B? Oh, great. That's a helpful tip. I'm so glad. Wedding season is about to start here in Australia, and I need to get my orders in. Thanks for the motivation. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, it doesn't, and this, I'm so thankful you said that, because you're in Australia. Of course, we're going into fall. You're going into spring. It's a busy time of year. The one thing you have to keep in mind is it's the entire world, right? I know a lot of farms, we were talking about quicksand earlier, and if you have a sub for quicksand, I'd love to know what that is for you. But a lot of times you think, oh, my local wholesaler, why don't they have this? And you don't realize you are literally competing for a finite number of roses with everyone in the world. And when it's probably the number one wedding rose is quicksand, everyone is asking for it. And you think if there's, I don't know, I'm just going to pick a number, 100,000 weddings in a weekend around the globe, and I bet it's probably more than that, and everyone wants one bunch, and nobody hardly ever wants one bunch. They usually want 3 or 4. You can see where that adds up so quickly. And before you know it, what do? So it's good to have substitutions. I know a lot of South American farms now that are sending their product to Holland. To Holland. And they're selling their roses on the auction because they can get more money for them. So that is a big hampering of the whole demand and the supply of flowers. Hey, thanks for joining. We're just talking about weddings and supply. We're also talking about if you have a good substitution for something like a quicksand or something like that that might be difficult to find sometimes. Also, we were showing this new rose called Moab from Rosa Prima. It's really beautiful. I just think this is an important conversation because so many times we don't find out till the last second, and then we're all scrambling just like everyone else. So again, placing your orders early with your suppliers is so important. And even if it's a flower farm, let me read this. My sub is a local soul sister or combining dry with fresh to achieve the same. Yeah, absolutely. What a great idea. And I'm definitely going to have to start checking into asking some local growers to start growing Soul Sister. I wonder if it's one we can grow here pretty easily. I think that's great. Well, I also, so what I was about to say, I've started having conversations with my local farmers because as summer ends, temperatures start to drop, right? Day length starts to shorten, and in some parts of the country, it starts to get drier. Well, what happens a lot of times is crops like celosia or sunflowers, things that you could count on a certain number of days to produce, all of a sudden take longer, or they go from being super tall to a little bit shorter, just because of those things. So it's always good, even if your suppliers are local sources, to just talk like, okay, how many weeks do you think, are you going to have this in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or do you think, in 2 weeks? And honestly, like I spoke with a supplier up north today, and like, it all depends on the demand. So if they're growing blueberry viburnum, for example, and all of a sudden they get inundated with orders and they ship out everything, it may only last 2 weeks. And it's not because the crop lasted 2 weeks, it's that the supply lasted 2 weeks. So it's both sides of that. It's the supply side of it, and it is it's Mother Nature. How long will it last? Let's see here. Do you have any tips for someone that is just starting out as a florist? I feel very overwhelmed with what I need to learn and all. Yeah, it is really difficult. I'm curious where you're located. If you'd like to put that in the comments, I'd love to know. It is challenging and it's really hard. I remember if you go back to our very first season of the Flower Podcast, one of a friend of mine that she is so dear and she is so sweet. Oh, you're in Atlanta. Okay, I thought I recognized that name. Her name is Jason Fitzgerald, and we did an interview with her. And one of the things that she did when she started off, when she started out, if I recall correctly, she was in like the San Francisco area, I believe. And she literally would go down to the flower market there every chance she got. And she'd ask questions. And sometimes, people don't respond well. They feel like that's annoying and that's frustrating. And I hate that. But then you sometimes find people who are very helpful, and they don't mind sharing information with you, and you just take notes and you just ask questions. But by visiting your suppliers, by seeing what's available, sometimes you'll learn the names of roses or names of flowers. You'll see, and honestly, this is so silly. If you compare, I think back 30 years ago when I started doing all of this. Actually, I started 31 years ago. There was no social media. So we had magazines and we had different things like that we would, look at to kind of get inspiration or to learn new varieties or to see, florists that were tagged that we could go back and we could check things out. Well, anyway, all that to say that, now with social media, if you can follow some really, there's a ton of people. We follow a lot of people, and I would recommend a lot. Almost every guest that we have had on the podcast, I would recommend following on Instagram, because you'll see products, you'll see the way they use them, you'll see all kinds of stuff that, like me sharing this rose yesterday. I know yesterday I'll pull one out of the arrangement. Yesterday I was using this, and people were asking, I got questions and comments. What is this? And this is how we learn, is you see something and it catches your eye and you just think, oh wow, okay, what is that? So in case see, that was a tease, wasn't it? So this is a type of Weigelia, and we get in a few different kinds. In the off season, we can sometimes pull this out of Holland, but right now this is domestically grown. We buy this from Charles Little, and they supply wholesalers with their fresh product. And this is a variety that they call chocolate Weigelia because of the dark brown foliage. And with pinks and things, it brings this depth of color. It's a great foliage for bouquet work. It does all kind of fun stuff. And I would really recommend it. But again, if you would walked in, maybe a local wholesaler, you might have seen that product and you can learn it. And now there's Catinus, which is smoke bush, which is another dark foliage. There's 9-bark and all kinds of colors. And so anyway, it's a lot of great products. And the thing about it is as these seasons and supplies shift, it's good to have backup plans. And by learning all these different dark foliages, for example, you can have more than one option, right? And so what we're talking about, if you're just joining us, is we're just kind of sharing, or I'm sharing some of my observations from recent, over the last couple weeks. There have definitely been some shifts in the supply, and that's because wedding season is waking up for people up north, for people everywhere. Wedding season is starting. People are going back to school. Labor Day is coming up soon, and that usually starts a huge kickoff. But it's already started, and it actually started probably about a week ago. And so if you are in the wedding business, and it really doesn't matter where in the world you are, you probably want to start putting your wedding orders in sooner. If you're a flower shop and you think, well, I don't do weddings because they're kind of a pain, and I have daily work, it doesn't matter. If there's special products that you're looking for, maybe for, you're going to offer a special, this is an opportunity for you too, because you might be able to find out that, okay, there's some products that are really high demand, like maybe this rose is in really high demand, but they may have other roses that aren't, and those are roses you can incorporate into your daily work that maybe you can create a really nice look without having to pay a lot of money for roses that are in such high demand. I totally would check that out. And you're so welcome for the tips. I know it can be very overwhelming, but I will say that, if you don't follow my other, one thing I would recommend, if you follow the podcast on Instagram, you're here, you may have been notified another way, but I just want you to know, please follow us here or on Facebook. Also, I have another Instagram account called Cut Flower Scott. We may be changing the name on that soon, but I just wanted to let you know that that's also another good account to follow, because with that account, I'm posting a lot of the flowers that we bring into Nashville, and it might be a way for you to see what's available, see what's out there, and see what you can ask your supplier for. It's always so hard. We started off this conversation, and if you're new and you're still following us, I'm curious. If you need quicksand roses, for example, and you can't get them, what do you use as a substitute? I'm curious what you think about this. I had a customer back when I was in Atlanta, and sometimes, and I thought this was crazy, but sometimes they would use Vendela, however you want to pronounce it, but they would use that rose as a substitute. And to me, that's so much whiter. I don't even think that's a blush. I mean, sometimes when it opens, it has a peachy quality to it, like really, really, really faint. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because, it depends on how desperate you are, I guess, and what your palate is and what you might choose to substitute for like a quicksand. I'm wondering also, I asked another question earlier, and you can feel free to go back and listen to the beginning of this. We're going to try to share it. Like, what other flowers are you having a challenge sourcing right now? I know just in me doing this for so long, I might have some suggestions, or somebody watching might have some suggestions. Thank you guys for joining. It's always great to have people join. I know that we've had so far a local source that grows Soul Sister as a sub. We've had somebody mention Sahara. We've had people mention Faith. We've had some spray roses, like cappuccino sprays, that were mentioned. I know sometimes people will use the cappuccino rose. And I know they can be kind of pricey out of South America, and they're like way bigger. But then there's also the cappuccino that comes out of Europe that is a lot smaller, but has kind of, again, that dusty kind of color with a little bit of pink in it. Not much, but it's sometimes a pretty rose to use in wedding work. I like them a lot of times because they're a little bit smaller. Sometimes that's easier, I think, to use in bridal work, personal flowers and things like that. And so I'm just curious if you guys are having a hard time sourcing things, or are wondering why you're hearing some of the stories you're hearing from your suppliers. I might be able to help explain it. I know it's so crazy. Last week, we had one vendor call me, and they were like, your plane's going to be late. I'm like, what? What's wrong now? Why is my plane going to be late? And it had a ton of roses on it for our work this week. And unfortunately, the reason was because I guess there was a lot of ash in the air. You know, there's a lot of volcanoes down there near Ecuador, and if there's too much ash, you know, the planes, it can literally cause problems with planes flying, which of course is bad. And so I thought, you know, at first you kind of think, well, I haven't heard anything about volcanic disruptions going on. I haven't heard, I don't know, when you hear it the first time, okay. Well, then I had two more vendors tell me the same thing. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this is really happening, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and it's always interesting. You know, we just kind of have to roll with it. Luckily, everything did leave. Everything did make our truck today, and we'll be having all the product this week. But again, I just want to emphasize this, because if you joined us late, I'm really just trying to share and give people an update that wedding season is here. It is happening. We're seeing some products already start to get less, and we're seeing the need for some substitutions. Forest fire smoke, okay? Is that what's going on? That's interesting, because I hadn't heard that. They didn't tell me why. I just assumed volcanic, but it could be forest fires or something going on, creating issues. I'll have to check into that. I'll do my homework. I'll make sure to do my homework on that. But nevertheless, a lot of products that you might be used to having a lot of availability for the last few months are starting to kind of go down in availability. And I would really recommend that you not wait to place your orders to the last minute. I would recommend making sure with your clients that you try to firm up those contracts as early as possible. Try to firm up those, event orders as early as possible. I had given a deadline to one vendor, that today was a drop dead date, and they told me tomorrow that they'd get it to me tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's okay, and we'll take the order and we'll do the best we can. But I will tell you now that we probably received 20 other late-ish orders today that will be ahead of that person when they go to place the order. And I know that probably seems really rude, but it's not meant to be. It's just when it's, you just try to take care of your customers the best you can, first come, first serve, and you don't want to penalize the people who have their orders in on time, because of that situation. So I know it's difficult and it's very challenging, and it's not a very popular conversation, but I care about y'all, and I want to make sure that if you need products that may be difficult and hard, that you just go ahead and start working on your orders as soon as possible and get them into your suppliers. And again, it doesn't matter if it's a local grower or if it's maybe a wholesaler or whoever that you get your product from, because the other thing is is just because you place an order early doesn't mean that the stars will align and that'll be available. It just means you're going to be higher up in the queue to get your product. So for example, this Moab rose, which is so fabulous that we got in from Rosa Prima, it's a newish rose that they've had out for a little while, but now I think they're starting to get more numbers. It's growing in popularity. Everybody wants it. So now what was easier to get 3 months ago is becoming hard to get because everybody wants it. Let me send some waves out to y'all. It's always great to see new faces. And so I just, again, because honestly, I worry about these things, and I know that so many of our listeners get frustrated because I see the comments on various like Facebook groups and things like that where people are like, you know, my supplier's telling me this, I'm having a hard time finding that. All of these things are challenging, and I know that spring was really crazy. Last fall was really crazy, and we kept reading about this tsunami of weddings that were coming, and this summer was kind of normal. I mean, some people were kind of busy, but July and the first part of August were kind of normal like it used to be pre-COVID, and now it's changed gears again, and now things are starting to pick up. And I just don't want you to get caught off guard by not getting your orders in early and not getting what you need. Again, think of substitutes, think of plan B, because this fly is just really not enjoying it. If you have any questions, feel free to type them below. We won't go on too much longer here, but I'm happy to answer any kind of questions that I can with either sourcing or substitutions or suggestions. I'm always available. You can always DM me also, and always just let me know. Maybe you've got a situation that's happening, and if I can help, I'm more than happy to help. I don't know if you saw earlier yesterday I had a reel. You know, we're all into the world of reels now, isn't it? Aren't we? That we've done with this Moab rose. And we've incorporated some beautiful kind of coral hanging amaranthus, some burgundy dahlias. Wish I had a few more of those, but I didn't want to hog them. And then this wonderful chocolate Wigelia. Also, this carnation is really great. Love these sort of nude carnations because they have just enough pink in them that, like with this Moab rose, it goes really well. So anyway, wanted to share that too. And the plague is coming, I guess. Anyway, always love joining and always love answering any kind of questions you might have about sourcing and things like that. And I'm going to ask one more time, and then we'll be done here in just a few minutes. If you order quicksand, and sometimes you get frustrated by either the price or the lack of availability, what do you use for a substitute? That is something that I am in the process because I feel like there's a lot of options, more than normal, and sometimes, you know, like we're used to what hey Gracie, we're used to what a lot of our wholesalers say, but there's now more local growers than ever on roses that, you know, you just want to have. And like Grace just joined. You know, Grace has amazing roses. They may have some colors you need to help substitute in these kind of color palettes. Again, we did an episode with Ellen Frost about other local growers that are growing roses that might actually have good substitutes for you. But again, order early. And it doesn't matter if it's a domestic grower, a local grower, an international grower. There is weather, there is supply issues a lot of times, and when everybody wants the same color palette, you know, like Coco Loco or Distant Drums or some of these varieties, it gets really can be kind of hairy, if you will. Creme Brulee Phlox, okay, in mass is another good option. And you know what, that is a good, that particular phlox, which I shared a week or two ago, is a great, it's that exact kind of color, isn't it? It brings in that. I hate to mention mums, because a lot of times they're not anywhere near the level of sophistication or elegance that a rose can bring. But there are some awesome, I'm so excited about some of the varieties we have incorporated into our staging order for this fall of vintage antique toned mums, whether they're cushions or cremones or footballs or spiders. And it's so funny. Today we were joking because some people were like, oh, I hate spider mums. I'm like, okay, so why don't we just rename them? We're going to start calling them pincushion cremones. And that way maybe we can stomach them a little better. But they have some great colors that work in these palettes so well. I know I like mums in the fall. I'm not always the biggest mum fan, especially when there's a great dahlia, right? But it's hard. It's definitely hard. Well, you guys have been great. And if you're just joining, I'd encourage you to go back. Thanks. I'm glad someone else agreed with me. They thought I was just trying to pull a snow job. But sometimes we just have to, slap some paint on it and call it something else and then move on, right? And so anyway, but we're going to try to share this video, this live, on our Instagram page. So if you're just joining us, we're just talking about sourcing flowers and some of the challenges right now and things you can do to help yourself and help your supplier, whether it's local, domestic, or international. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great night, and I hope you take care, and thanks so much for joining me. All right, y'all take care.